The phone call that changed everything came on a Tuesday morning in March. Sarah Mitchell was drinking her coffee and preparing for another day at her marketing job when Dr. Rebecca Torres from Children's Hospital called with news she'd been waiting 18 months to hear. "Sarah, we have a match." Those 4 words represented the culmination of a journey that had begun 2 years earlier, when Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone who knew her, including herself. She had registered to be a living kidney donor, not for a family member or close friend, but for a complete stranger, specifically for a child she'd never met who was somewhere on the national transplant waiting list, slowly dying while hoping for a miracle. The decision had roots in a tragedy that occurred 3 years earlier. Sarah's younger brother Michael had been killed in a car accident at age 28, in his final moments in the ICU. As the family faced the devastating reality that he wouldn't survive, Michael's organs had been donated to save the lives of 4 other people. The experience of seeing Michael's death become the source of life for others had planted a seed in Sarah's mind that grew stronger over time. "I kept thinking about how Michael's kidney saved someone we'll never meet," Sarah had explained to her parents when she announced her intention to become a living donor. "I have 2 healthy kidneys. If I can give one away and save a child's life, why wouldn't I?" The screening process for living kidney donation was exhaustive and rigorous. Sarah underwent months of medical testing to ensure she was physically and psychologically suitable to donate. Blood tests, imaging studies, psychological evaluations, and consultations with social workers all confirmed what Sarah already knew. She was making this decision freely, with full understanding of the risks, and with a genuine desire to help someone in need. The recipient, she learned, was 8-year-old David Chen, who had been born with polycystic kidney disease. David's kidneys had been failing progressively since he was 5, and by age 7, he was on dialysis 3 times a week while his name moved slowly up the transplant waiting list. His parents, Lisa and James Chen, had exhausted their options for living donation within their family. Neither parent was a compatible match, and David's grandparents were too old to safely donate. "David's been on the list for over a year," Dr. Torres had explained during Sarah's final consultation. "Children his age with his condition typically wait 2 to 3 years for a deceased donor kidney, and his health is declining. Your donation could literally save his life." Sarah had never met the Chen family before deciding to donate, but she'd asked to exchange letters through the hospital's transplant coordinator. The correspondence that developed between Sarah and David's parents revealed a family devoted to their son, struggling with the helplessness of watching their child's health deteriorate while waiting for a miracle they couldn't control. "David is the most resilient kid I know," Lisa Chen had written in one letter. "He never complains about dialysis, even though it makes him tired and weak. He talks about what he wants to do when he gets his new kidney. Play soccer, go swimming, run around without getting tired. He doesn't know about you specifically, but he prays every night for the person who will save his life." That letter had confirmed for Sarah that she was making the right decision. This wasn't about being a hero or seeking recognition. It was about giving a child the chance to live the normal, healthy life that every kid deserved. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning in late May. Sarah's parents, initially worried about the risks their daughter was taking for a stranger, had come to support her decision completely. Her mother, Patricia, would later say, "I realized that this was Sarah living out the values we raised her with. That you help people when you can, that you don't turn away from suffering if you have the power to address it." The transplant surgery itself was performed simultaneously. Sarah's kidney was removed laparoscopically, while David was prepared to receive it in an adjacent operating room. The procedure took 6 hours, and by evening, both patients were stable and the kidney was functioning perfectly in David's small body. Sarah's recovery was swift. Within days, she was walking the hospital halls, and within 2 weeks, she was back to normal activities. But the emotional impact of the experience was profound. She'd given part of herself to save a child she'd never met, and the knowledge that David was somewhere in the same hospital, getting stronger every day because of her decision, filled her with a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. The hospital's policy was to maintain anonymity between donors and recipients, initially, but both families had expressed interest in meeting once everyone had recovered. 6 weeks after the surgery, Dr. Torres arranged for Sarah to meet the Chen family in a hospital conference room. The moment David Chen ran into that room and hugged Sarah's legs while saying "thank you for saving my life" became the defining moment of Sarah's existence. This wasn't an abstract act of charity anymore. This was a real child, vibrant and healthy, whose life she'd literally saved. "I don't know how to thank you," Lisa Chen had said through tears. "You gave us our son's future. You gave me the chance to do something that really mattered," Sarah had replied. "David didn't just get a kidney from me. I got a new understanding of what it means to be alive." That meeting had been 18 months ago, and in the time since, the Chen and Mitchell families had become inseparable. David called Sarah Aunt Sarah, and she'd become a fixture at his soccer games, school events, and family celebrations. The scar they both carried from the surgery had become a symbol of their unbreakable connection. The Family Feud opportunity had come through David's school, which had nominated both families for the show's special episode featuring extraordinary acts of love and sacrifice. The nomination letter had focused not just on Sarah's donation, but on the beautiful extended family that had emerged from that act of generosity. When Sarah first received the call from the show's producers, her immediate thought was to include David and his family as part of her team. "This isn't my story," she'd told the producers. "This is our story. David and I are connected for life now, and that connection is what makes this beautiful." The combined Mitchell-Chen family team consisted of Sarah, her parents Patricia and Robert, David, and his parents Lisa and James. They'd spent weeks practicing together, with David's excitement about being on television infectious to everyone around him. "Aunt Sarah," David had said during one of their practice sessions, "when we're on TV, I want everyone to know that you're my hero. You didn't just give me a kidney, you gave me everything." Steve Harvey noticed the unusual family dynamic immediately during the pre-show warm-up. There was something about the way Sarah and David interacted, the obvious love and connection between them, despite their lack of blood relation, that suggested a story deeper than typical family bonds. "Sarah and David," Steve said during introductions, "tell me about your family." Sarah put her arm around David's shoulders, and he beamed up at her with the kind of adoration typically reserved for parents. "This is David Chen," Sarah said, her voice filled with love. 18 months ago, I donated one of my kidneys to him. Today he's healthy, strong, and the most important person in my life." David stepped forward, with the confidence of a child who'd never met a stranger. "Mr. Harvey, Sarah saved my life. I was really sick, and my kidneys didn't work, and Sarah gave me one of hers so I could be healthy." Steve's eyebrows raised with genuine amazement. "Sarah donated her kidney to you? How did you two know each other?" "We didn't," Sarah replied. "David was on the transplant waiting list, and I was registered as a living donor. We were matched through the hospital. I'd never met him before I decided to give him my kidney." Steve was clearly moved by the magnitude of Sarah's decision. "You gave your kidney to a complete stranger?" "I gave my kidney to a child who needed it," Sarah corrected gently. "The fact that we were strangers then doesn't matter. We're family now." David nodded enthusiastically. "Sarah is my aunt now. She comes to all my soccer games, and we have matching scars." Steve's expression showed deep respect for what he was hearing. The love between Sarah and David was obvious and genuine, transcending any traditional definition of family. The game began against the Williams family from Tennessee, and both teams proved competitive. Sarah and David worked together seamlessly, with David's enthusiasm and Sarah's strategic thinking making them a formidable pair. When questions came up about family, love, or helping others, their answers carried a weight that resonated throughout the studio. During commercial breaks, Steve found himself drawn to the story of how two families had become one through an act of extraordinary generosity. The way Sarah spoke about David, and the way he looked at her, suggested a bond that went far beyond donor and recipient. It was during the fourth round that the question came that would allow Sarah to articulate the profound meaning of her decision. "We surveyed 100 people," Steve announced. "Name the greatest gift you can give someone." Sarah was at the podium. The question felt like an invitation to share everything she'd learned about love, sacrifice, and the true meaning of giving. She thought about the kidney surgery, about David's recovery, about the way their families had merged into something beautiful and unbreakable. A second chance at life, Sarah said clearly. The words carried such conviction, such depth of meaning, that the studio fell completely silent. Steve set down his cards immediately and approached Sarah. A second chance at life, Steve repeated softly. Sarah, that's powerful. Tell me what you mean by that. Sarah looked down at David, who was watching her with complete trust and admiration, then back at Steve. When I gave David my kidney, I wasn't just giving him an organ, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. I was giving him the chance to grow up, to play sports, to go to college, to fall in love, to have children of his own someday. I was giving him all the years he might not have had without that kidney. The audience was completely absorbed in Sarah's explanation. But the truth is, Sarah continued, David gave me something too. He gave me the chance to do something that really mattered, to be part of something bigger than myself. Before David, I was just living my life. After David, I understood what it meant to be truly alive. David couldn't contain himself any longer. He stepped forward from the family section and took Sarah's hand. Mr. Harvey, David said, his 8-year-old voice clear and strong, Sarah didn't just save my life. She became my family. She comes to my soccer games. She helps me with homework. She taught me how to ride a bike when I got strong enough. She didn't just give me a kidney. She gave me everything. Steve was visibly moved by David's words and the obvious love between him and Sarah. David, Steve said, kneeling down to David's eye level. What do you want people to know about Sarah? David thought for a moment, then spoke with the wisdom that sometimes comes from children who faced serious challenges. I want them to know that Sarah is the bravest person in the world, David said. She let doctors take out part of her body to save someone she didn't even know. That's like being a superhero, but real. Steve looked up at Sarah, his eyes filling with tears. Sarah, I need you to understand something. What you did, giving a kidney to a child you'd never met, that's not just generous. That's love in its purest form. Sarah's composure began to falter as the emotion of the moment reached her. I just did what anyone would do, she said quietly. No, Steve said firmly, standing back up. Most people wouldn't do what you did. Most people would think about it, maybe even want to do it, but they wouldn't actually do it. You literally gave part of your body to save a stranger's child. That's extraordinary. Steve turned to address the studio audience. Ladies and gentlemen, Sarah and David are showing us something that we all need to see. They're showing us that family isn't just about blood, it's about love. They're showing us that sometimes the most beautiful relationships come from the most selfless acts. The audience began to applaud, but Steve continued. Sarah didn't just donate a kidney. She created a family. She didn't just save David's life. She enriched her own life in ways she probably never imagined. Steve reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card, but then he paused. Sarah, I want to do something, Steve said. I want to make sure people know about organ donation, about the thousands of children on waiting lists who need kidneys, livers, hearts. Would you be willing to help us spread awareness about living donation? Sarah nodded, tears flowing freely. If it helps one more child get the transplant they need, if it encourages one more person to register as a donor, then absolutely. Steve then did something unprecedented. He knelt down beside David and Sarah. You two have taught me something today that I'll never forget, Steve said. You've shown me that love isn't just about what we feel, it's about what we do. Sarah, you turned love into action in the most literal way possible. He removed his suit jacket and gently placed it around both Sarah's and David's shoulders, encompassing them both. This jacket has been with me through thousands of shows, Steve said. But today, it belongs to two people who've shown me what real love looks like. You wear this, and remember that you didn't just save a life, you created a miracle. The standing ovation that followed was unlike anything the Family Feud studio had ever heard. The audience was on their feet, many crying openly, witnessing something that transcended entertainment and entered the realm of the sacred. But the moment that would become legendary happened when David looked up at Sarah and said, Aunt Sarah, "Do you think other kids can find angels like you?" "David," Sarah replied, "I think there are angels everywhere. Sometimes they just need to know that someone needs them." The episode aired 12 weeks later and became one of the most impactful Family Feud episodes in the show's history. The segment featuring Sarah and David's story was viewed millions of times, but more importantly, it generated an unprecedented response from viewers interested in organ donation. The National Kidney Foundation reported a 300% increase in living donor inquiries in the month following the episode's broadcast. Sarah received thousands of messages from people who had been inspired to register as organ donors, from families dealing with organ failure, and from other living donors who thanked her for sharing her story. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from children on transplant waiting lists, who wrote to thank Sarah for showing them that there were people in the world who cared enough to help strangers. Steve Harvey kept his promise to support organ donation awareness, featuring Sarah and David on his talk show multiple times and partnering with transplant organizations to promote living donation. 2 years after the Family Feud appearance, Sarah was asked to speak at the National Transplant Games, where David competed in swimming and track events alongside hundreds of other transplant recipients. Standing at the podium, wearing Steve's jacket that had become her signature at speaking events, Sarah addressed an audience of donors, recipients, and families. "When I decided to donate my kidney," she told the crowd, "I thought I was giving David a chance at life. What I didn't realize was that David was giving me a chance at a different kind of life. One filled with purpose, with meaning, with the knowledge that we're all connected in ways we don't always see." She looked out at David, who was wearing his swimming medals and beaming with pride. "David and I share more than just a kidney now," Sarah continued. "We share a story that proves love doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's as simple as seeing someone who needs help and deciding to help them. Sometimes it's as straightforward as having something someone else needs and choosing to give it." Today, Sarah Mitchell continues to work in marketing, but she's also become a national advocate for living organ donation. David Chen is a healthy, active 10-year-old who plays soccer, swims competitively, and maintains straight A's in school. They still see each other weekly, and their families celebrate holidays together as one extended unit. In Sarah's apartment, next to a photo of her and David from the transplant surgery recovery, hangs Steve Harvey's jacket, alongside David's latest school pictures and soccer trophies. But the most meaningful display is a simple frame containing 2 photos, one of Sarah's surgical scar and one of David's matching scar, with a caption that reads "Connected for Life." Because Sarah had learned that the most profound love doesn't always look like romance or friendship or family bonds. Sometimes it looks like a stranger willing to undergo surgery to save a child she's never met. Sometimes it looks like giving part of yourself, literally, to ensure that someone else can live. And in the pediatric ward of Children's Hospital, where David still goes for regular checkups, his story is told to other families facing transplant decisions. The message is simple. Somewhere out there is someone who might be willing to save your child's life, and somewhere out there is a child who might need you to save theirs. Sometimes the greatest gifts require the greatest courage, but as Sarah and David proved, when love translates into action, miracles become not just possible, but inevitable. The kidney that Sarah gave to David wasn't just an organ. It was a bridge between 2 families, a testament to human generosity, and proof that sometimes strangers are just family members we haven't met yet.